Okay, calm down. You got limits, man. You got limits, man. Okay, calm down.
Hello, everyone. How are you? So excited to be here. We have a special daytime stream for you guys at the Katie Halper Show. Oops, I have a window open. Okay, are we good now? See, I'm not used to this because I'm usually streaming at night. Things are different right now. This is a special daytime stream. So excited to be here. We have a great show for you today. We have a couple of guests who we're really excited to be talking to. But before I start, make sure that you do like this stream, share, give it a thumbs up, subscribe if you don't already subscribe. Also, if you can support the Patreon, you can do that at patreon.com/the Katie Halper Show. Again, that's patreon.com/the Katie Halper Show. And let's see, what else do I have to say? Anything else? I think that's about it. So we're going to be talking during the second half of the show. We're going to be talking about last night's protests, and we're going to be talking to Afeni and Chuck Modiano, two activists who were at the protest last night, where there were nonviolent protesters who were violently attacked by police. Even though congressmen and the media are saying that the protesters were the violent ones, and that's not true. So Afeni and Chuck are going to talk about that. But first, we're talking with Yousef Munayyer, who is a Palestinian American analyst and head of the Israel-Palestine program at the Arab Center of Washington, D.C. So Yousef, welcome.
Hi there, Katie. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Thanks so much for joining. I've been wanting to have you on for a while. Actually, the reason I want to have you on initially was I was at one of the protests. I think I was at the protest at Grand Central Station that shut down Grand Central Station. And I was streaming on Instagram, and someone wrote to me because I caught some of the projections that they were doing on the building across the street. And one of those projections was from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. And I was streaming that, and someone texted me like, really? You're streaming calls for genocide? And I was with my friend, and I was like, what do I even say to this? He goes, oh, send him Yousef Munayyer's piece on that. And I went to Jewish Currents, and I found your piece, and I did send it to him. But I'd wanted to have you on to talk about that. And then, of course, that slogan is even more newsworthy because, as people know, Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib was censured over that phrase. So can you tell us what that phrase really means and its significance and relevance in this moment?
Yeah, I mean, it's in some ways it's crazy that we are even talking about a protest slogan at a time where there are thousands of people who've been killed in the Israeli bombardment on Gaza, but it's not unrelated, and that's sort of the departure point that I will take to kind of explain this. When I wrote that piece for Jewish Currents, it was in 2021, and it was in relation to some of the events that took place in May of that year. Where we saw, Israel attempting to force Palestinians out of their homes in Jerusalem, which coincided as well with Israeli police raids on the Haram al-Sharif and the Al-Aqsa Mosque during Laylat al-Qadr, one of the holiest nights of the month of Ramadan, which really set off a mobilization across the entirety of the land that exists between the river of Jordan and the Mediterranean Sea, the land which we Palestinians call home, and the land that we call Palestine. And obviously other people have different names for this land. But for us, this is Palestine, and this is where we are from. I think that moment represented, not just represented, but was the single largest national mobilization of Palestinians since 1936, where you had all of the different communities within Palestine, whether they were Palestinians living under occupation in the West Bank or in Jerusalem, or Palestinian citizens of Israel, or Palestinians living under occupation and siege in Gaza. All of them were responding to this moment. And this idea of from the river to the sea not just represents a geographic space, but it represents a response to policies of fragmentation that have sought to divide Palestinians into these different, smaller, weaker cantons, so that they cannot push back against the policies of Zionism, which do this to them. And so 2021, the May of 2021, really represented a moment of national unity among Palestinians, not just in word, but also in action, which is something that made it, I think, so important. And, we heard then this slogan demonized as a call to genocide or what have you. And I wanted to explain the reality is that this is a call for freedom. And, I think one of the things that I've been thinking about is this demonization of protest slogans is actually not unique to Palestine, not unique to Palestine activism. There's a lot of reasons for that. But, one of the ones that it reminded me of is sort of the response to Black Lives Matter, and we heard as that protest chant really captivated a movement that was calling for racial justice in this country, people who zeroed in on the slogan as a way to demonize and delegitimize the people who were calling for racial justice. And they said, well, what do you mean Black Lives Matter? What about white lives? Are you saying white lives don't matter? Why not all lives matter? And on one end of the spectrum, you had people who were just kind of like ignorant about it.
Right.
And on the other hand, you had people who were deliberately malicious and, wanted to impugn the motives of a movement calling for racial justice by saying that they were actually secretly out for white genocide. Right. And so we see these things kind of play out in different places. The reality is, from the river to the sea, Palestine is not free today. Palestinians are not free today. From the river to the sea today, there is an Israeli state. That Israeli state controls effectively the entirety of the territory and treats people differently based on who they are. That's the fundamental problem. And this call for freedom responds to that one state reality of apartheid by saying freedom is what we need. And it is the Palestinians in Palestine who are not free, and that's what has to change. And so it shouldn't surprise us that a call that focuses on freedom, that focuses on the rights of people, and that unifies Palestinians is one that is demonized by supporters of Israel and supporters of Israel's apartheid policies, because it threatens those very unjust policies in a direct way. It doesn't threaten the existence of Jews in the land. It threatens the existence of a system of injustice. Just as South Africa today continues to exist without apartheid, Israelis and Palestinians can continue to exist without a system of apartheid. What we call for is an end to that system of injustice. And so, this is what that slogan is about.
Another irony is that the from the river to the sea idea is already incorporated by the Israeli government. So if it's a genocidal cry, which Israel defenders claim, then Israel is also based on a genocidal cry, and it's more than a cry. It's in the Likkud charter, which is Benjamin Netanyahu's political party. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, I mean, and again, this is one of the sort of like searing hypocrisies of all of us. There seems to be a lot of people who are more outraged at the protest chant of activists calling for freedom and justice than they are about the actual policies that animate a state with the power to actually create those outcomes on the ground, and which has been creating those outcomes on the ground for decades by denying Palestinians freedom across the entirety of the territory. And so, it's hard to take these concerns seriously. And honestly, it does really a disservice to a very legitimate cause of trying to combat anti-Semitism by trying to say that Palestinians who are calling for freedom and justice in their homeland are actually, engaged in anti-Semitism because of that. It ends up using anti-Semitism and allegations of anti-Semitism as a way to perpetuate injustice. And I think this is one of the reasons, people who see through this, who understand what the Israeli government is doing, are really turning away from, this sort of response. They see it as empty, and they see it as counterproductive, and in fact dangerous as well. And I think that probably animated a lot of the attitudes of the people who were protesting in front of the DNC yesterday. And I know that that's something that you're going to be covering in this program as well. I think you're on mute.
Thank you. See, I'm already being silenced. Thank you for that. Yeah, I'd muted by accident. I actually wanted to read part of the Likkud charter, which people who criticize this protest cry seem to not have any problem with. Let's see. It says, the Likkud Charter, the right of the Jewish people to the land of Israel. The right of the Jewish people to the land of Israel is eternal and indisputable, and is linked with the right to security and peace. Therefore, Judea and Samaria will not be handed to any foreign administration. Between the sea and the Jordan, there will only be Israeli sovereignty. A plan which relinquishes parts of Western Eretz Israel undermines our right to the country, unavoidably leads to the establishment of a Palestinian state, jeopardizes the security of the Jewish population, endangers the existence of the state of Israel, and frustrates any prospect of peace.
Yeah, and I think, it's important to point out this is the original Likud charter, and it was updated during the sort of peace process era, just to be more clear about this.
Right.
And the language that they chose to use was that the government of Israel flatly rejects the creation of a Palestinian state east of the Jordan River. So in case there was any doubt what the sort of Likud party's vision for the river to the sea is, it's a vision of apartheid. They are not saying from the river to the sea, everybody will have equal rights. They are not saying from the river to the sea, we'll have a binational state. They're saying from the river to the sea, there will only be Israeli sovereignty, and we do not intend to extend equal rights to Palestinians who live there. Yet it's Palestinians who call for freedom who are accused of having genocidal intentions. It would be laughable if it wasn't so dangerous, and it really is.
Well, another thing that Israel opposes, besides Palestinian statehood, which they make very clear, is BDS, Boycott, Divest, Sanction. Can you talk about how the state of Israel, the government of Israel, and its various ministries have combated BDS?
Yeah, this is a really great question, and I appreciate it. I think one thing as we start to understand this that's important for us to grasp is that the state of Israel had actually become quite comfortable fighting armed resistance or terrorism or whatever one wants to call it. The challenge that they had was, as one Israeli general said, we don't do Gandhi well. What do I mean by that? It's easy for Israel to claim sort of legitimacy for its policies when it can demonstrate that it's under security threat. And of course, that's much easier to do when the challenge is coming in the form of arms. But when it's coming in the form of nonviolent dissent, which is what boycotts, divestment, and sanctions are, it's a lot harder to defend Israel's policies. And so they came to realize this over time and decided that they needed different approaches to deal with dissent in global civil society around Israel's policies. And they did this in a number of different ways. They tried to do it through sort of propaganda and investment in sort of the Israeli foreign ministry to try to bring people to Israel and send them on propaganda tours and what have you. But then, in the early 2010s, they sort of started to realize that that wasn't working. That trying to defend Israel's policies against nonviolent dissent wasn't effective because it's hard to sell apartheid in the 21st century. And so they decided instead of trying to defend their policies, they needed to go on the attack against dissenters. And this was a conscious Israeli government decision that became enacted through the establishment of something called the Israeli Ministry of Strategic Affairs in 2015, which was given a mandate in October of that year by the Security Cabinet in Israel to combat boycott, divestment, and sanctions activism wherever it existed in the world. And they did that in a number of different ways, including through overt means, but also through covert means, some of which we still don't know about because they are they remain state secrets. But much of it we have learned a lot about. And one of the ways that they did this was by partnering with like-minded organizations around the world in the United States and Europe to pursue some very specific objectives, including passing anti-BDS legislation, and also engaging in lawfare and smear campaigns to target dissenters in the United States and in Europe and elsewhere. And one of the sort of key components of these campaigns was to try to smear nonviolent activism as something that was inherently violent. And so they tried to connect it to terrorism, and they tried to connect it to anti-Semitism. And so they realized that, when they went about this, for example, through anti-BDS legislation, they ran into something called the First Amendment. And they realized that the First Amendment was a problem because political speech is protected, and you cannot direct law enforcement against political speech because we have these constitutional rights. And similar things exist in Europe as well, even though they're not always as robust as the First Amendment here in the United States. And so they decided that there has to be a way to do this by circumventing the First Amendment. And the way they went about this is by shifting to making this a conversation about anti-Semitism, because discrimination is not something that is protected by the First Amendment. And so if you can cast nonviolent dissent for Palestinian rights as anti-Semitism, you can then hijack the law enforcement apparatus of the state and direct it against the dissenters that you want to target. And so there has been this major effort in the last several years to redefine anti-Semitism in a way that includes Palestinian expressions for freedom, that includes calls for Palestinian refugees to return to their homes, that includes Palestinian calls for equal rights, anything that challenges a Zionist interpretation to justice is considered anti-Semitism. And anything that opposes Zionism is considered anti-Semitism. And so, we've seen this effort develop over the last several years, and we are seeing it really now going into overdrive in this moment. I think, one of the things that's also important to point out is, remarkably, and despite all of that, in a moment where we are seeing perhaps more intense repression targeting those who speak up for Palestine, we are seeing more people speaking up for the rights of Palestinians than ever. And so I think this really is a failed strategy. And more people are looking at it as sort of a desperate attempt to silence dissent than those that are really looking at it as some kind of good faith effort to combat anti-Semitism or extremism.
Mhm. And what about what the ADL is doing and the Brandeis Center?
Yeah, I mean, these are two organizations that have cooperated with the Israeli Ministry of Strategic Affairs. They've participated in convenings put together by this ministry. There's a long trail of evidence of this, but they have long sought to try to use existing U.S. state law to target dissenters in the United States against Israeli policy. They've sought to do this by trying to stretch anti-terrorism law to apply it to BDS. They've done it by trying to stretch anti-discrimination law by tying it to BDS through claims of anti-Semitism. And now we're hearing the Anti-Defamation League and the Brandeis Center for Human Rights Policy. I'm not sure what the exact name is, but organizations that purport to be human rights organizations and civil liberties defenders, calling for mass terrorism investigations of college students. I mean, it's again, it would be laughable if it wasn't so dangerous. I think it's really despicable and a desperate effort to try to, catch a ship that's already sailed, to be honest with you.
Yeah, and of course, the ADL now considers Students for Justice in Palestine a hate group, and Jewish Voice for Peace a hate group. So we should know that when the ADL talk about trivializing anti-Semitism, when they talk about an increase in anti-Semitism and a certain number of incidents, I don't take them seriously at all, because for the ADL, a major act of anti-Semitism would be a protest calling for a ceasefire organized by Jewish Voice for Peace.
Well, and people should look at the ADL's data. I mean, one thing I will give the ADL credit for is that, if you look hard enough, you can actually find what goes into their data. They don't put this out on the front, but if you want to go look, you can see that they count in their anti-Semitic incidents anti-Israel rallies,
right?
Including rallies that are organized by Jewish groups. Look, there is an effort within significant parts of the establishment Jewish community to try to monopolize a definition of Jewish identity. And to make Jewish identity Zionist identity. And while there has long been dominant strains of Zionist identity within Jewish communities for parts of the last century, there's always been non-Zionist and anti-Zionist strains as well. And so I think the effort to do this is actually, causing a lot of people to push back against these organizations, reject their efforts, and also call into question what sort of commitments they really have to justice and to combating, any form of bigotry.
It's also an anti-Semitic trope, which is so ironic, because this idea that all Jews are a monolith who support Israel is something that raging anti-Semites put forward, and then AIPAC, the ADL, and the government of Israel put forward.
Yeah, I mean, no community is a monolith. No community all thinks alike, and the idea that they should be expected to, I think, is preposterous, and again goes against the values of anybody who is genuinely fighting against any form of bigotry.
Right. And for lots of Jews, that's part of their identity,
including Jews who live in Israel, by the way.
Mm.
There's plenty of anti-Zionist Jews who live in Israel. I wouldn't say they represent the majority of Jews who live in Israel, but even Israel understands, the government of Israel understands that there are anti-Zionist communities within Israel. And of course, the largest anti-Zionist community within Israel are Palestinians, of which there are millions. And so again, all of this is sort of, I think it's actually aimed at a couple of things. One, it is a response to divisions within the American Jewish community over Israel policy. And it's an attempt to kind of discipline and corral the American Jewish community in a singular direction. And that is a response to many people increasingly questioning what Israel is doing to the Palestinians over the last 20 years or so. including within the Jewish community. But it's also an effort to try to silence Palestinians. Let's be clear. If you are saying that the only people who are really allowed to be part of respectable discourse are Zionists, then you are telling Palestinians either you negate your own existence by adopting Zionism, or you can't be part of any conversation about what should happen with you. And I think that's a fundamentally racist sort of position to take, and it's one that these groups take unapologetically, while claiming to also combat bigotry. It's bonkers.
Yeah, something else that you tweeted out that I wanted to share is the following. Okay, you put this on Twitter. Let me just. Ahmed tweeted. Hold on 1 second. Germany's Bundestag will discuss Friday a draft law that would make commitment to Israel's right to exist a requirement for citizenship. The state that recently ethnically cleansed an entire people based on their identity will make it law to be committed to protecting a state where the offspring of the people Germany genocided are committing their own genocide and ethnically cleansing an entire people based on their ethnicity. And as you pointed out, Yousef, in your tweet, this is not even a requirement in the state of Israel.
Right. Yeah. I mean, when I first saw this, and first, we have to understand that, this is just the most recent step in a series of batshit insane steps that the German government has been taking in recent years, in relation to this issue, really more than any other country in Europe. And we can have a whole episode just on that. But when I first saw this news, I thought to myself, wow, Germany's not even asking for German citizens to acknowledge Germany's right to exist as a condition of citizenship. And then I realized Israel doesn't even require its citizens to acknowledge Israel's right to exist as a condition of citizenship. So why is Germany doing it? And I think one thing people miss is that, these efforts to quote unquote combat anti-Semitism by targeting and silencing Palestinians are things that far right European movements are gravitating to, because they're seeing them as opportunities to do away and target immigrant communities within Europe, under the guise of combating anti-Semitism. And so in Germany, of course, this is something that is going to target a lot of immigrant communities, a lot of refugee communities, and it's going to be sold as a way to combat anti-Semitism. But really, it's the wildest sort of wet dream of far-right fascists in Germany, cloaked in pro-Israel language. It's wild because it's been trending this way in Germany for some time. But I think that people of conscience should recognize it for what it is, and it's certainly not an effort to combat anti-Semitism.
Right, and we've seen a lot of far right leaders championing Israel and pretending to be opponents of anti-Semitism.
And that's because Israel has provided a model that a lot of far-right movements appreciate. They see a model of a ethno-majoritarian state and say, we want to be like that. Here you have an ethno-majoritarian state that is disregarding what the world says about human rights and international law and treatment of minorities. And for far-right parties in Europe, this is the goal. This is the ideal. The right-wing Israeli government under Netanyahu, and basically every government in Israel for the last 15 years or so has been a right-wing government under Netanyahu with few exceptions. has built very strong ties with right-wing parties in Europe, precisely because it represents this model that they wish to emulate, and not just in Europe. We see it in Israel's relations with India. We see it with Israel's relations with countries throughout Africa. It is supplying not just the model, but also the resources and the weapons for far-right movements to dominate political control in their own spaces. And at the same time, it's trying to maintain a relationship with Western liberal states that say they oppose these very things, and pretending to be sort of a beacon of democracy or freedom or what have you. I mean, it's something that collapses under the least bit of scrutiny, and yet the leaders of the free world are willing to play along.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, honestly, they do so at their own risk and at their own peril, because more and more people around the world are seeing this blatant hypocrisy, and they don't want to stand for it.
Mm-hmm. So want to thank Wadsworth for the super chat. Also, 2 questions and everyone who is giving compliments to Yousef, thank you for doing that. And you can show your appreciation with the thumbs up. So give a thumbs up, give a like if you haven't already. But Firmware writes, when have you ever heard the phrase the Palestinian state has a right to exist? Which I know is something that we wanted to speak to. You want to talk about, Yousef, the phrase of Israel's right to exist. And then another question or comment that relates to something else we want to talk in our remaining time is 3 sides to every story, but looking at the region, I only see one state where both Arabs and Israelis are actually living together peacefully in any significant numbers. So let's talk about that claim, that phrase, Israel's right to exist, what it means, where the Palestinian right to exist is, and then we can talk about what a one-state future.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that question. One of the things when we've been hearing sort of this discussion in recent days and weeks about from the river to the sea, is a lot of people saying, well, why can't you imagine how Jewish people hear that phrase?
Yeah.
Right. And I understand people can hear that phrase to mean different things. And I ask, do people ever wonder how Palestinians hear certain phrases that are thrown around about this situation? Things that we hear repeated ad nauseum by elected officials over and the media over and over and over again. When Palestinians hear things like Israel has the right to exist, what do you think that means to us? For us, and in reality, the state of Israel came into existence through the ethnic cleansing of Palestine. And the existence of Israel is fundamentally tied to that historic reality. So when you say Israel has the right to exist, you are saying that Israel has the right to ethnically cleanse Palestinians and to continue denying them rights in their homeland. And I don't see anybody getting exercised about that. I don't see anybody saying that this is language that is outside the bounds of polite discussion and in fact should criminalize people or have them censured in Congress. No, actually it becomes the very barrier for entry into discussion instead. And so, I think these things need to be investigated critically. And look, the fundamental problem with the Western perspective into this issue, and it predates sort of the U.S. leadership on this issue and goes back to the British Mandate. The West has always seen the Jewish people as a people. And, for many years in Europe, they saw them as a people that they didn't want in Europe. But they never saw the Palestinians as a people. They saw them as sort of part of an amorphous blob of Arabs that could just go live somewhere else. And that fundamental denial of Palestinian rights to self-determination, that fundamental denial of a Palestinian connection to this space has animated Western perspectives and policy for the last century. And we see it in this double standard around the way that people talk about what Palestinians are allowed to say and aspire to, and what is sort of the norm in our discourse, which is obviously something that causes great pain and offense to Palestinian ears.
That's such an important point, because It would be one thing if the people who are saying this is causing Jewish pain or this is triggering, if those people paid any attention whatsoever to what was causing Palestinian pain. But these same people are saying things like suggesting that all Palestinian civilians are like Nazis, right? As a Republican member of Congress said from the floor. They're saying things like Palestine needs to be turned into a parking lot, flattened, which is something another Republican member of Congress said. And it's such a this weaponization of trauma to justify causing other people trauma is so disgusting and disingenuous. And as you said, you get Rashida Tlaib gets in trouble for this, but the people who are actually supporting genocide don't. But that's interesting what you said, because I have to say, I always heard like Israel's right to self-defense. What I always thought about it was like how dangerous it is because it can be invoked to justify anything. Obviously, bombing a hospital is not self-defense. But I never honestly thought, and this probably is because I'm not Palestinian, like I never realized how, I knew it was dangerous, but I never realized how insensitive a term it is when it's, as you just pointed out, its very right to existence was predicated on the right to ethnically cleanse and kill and exile
Yeah, and
people.
I think, look, it's worth expanding on this point a little bit. First, the idea that states have a right to exist.
Yeah.
I don't know where that comes from. States don't have rights, people do. And the states have obligations towards people and maintaining their rights. And the legitimacy of states comes from the extent to which they respect the rights of the people that they have obligations to. And so, I don't think, Palestine has a right to exist. I don't think Israel has a right to exist. America has a right to exist. This idea is just contrived out of nowhere. The question is, how do these states respect the rights of the people that they have obligations to? And that is what is at the fundamental base of this question of legitimacy that Israel faces. So this is one piece. The second piece that I would say is when it comes to sort of, what sort of the Zionists say is unacceptable when it comes to, it's transparently not about genocide or anything like that. And the best example is that when Palestinian citizens of Israel proposed a law in the Israeli Knesset to make Israel a state of all its citizens, it was deemed too radical to even be debated in the Knesset. And the Supreme Court agreed with the Knesset's decision to prevent this bill from even being discussed. So what Israel defines as an existential threat is equality. It's not an existential threat to Jewish existence within the land. It's equality with Palestinians. And so even when we call for equality, we are being told that we seek to destroy people. And so, it becomes really nonsensical, the kind of stuff that we're asked to kind of respond to and deal with.
And the final, we're going to have you back on to discuss this in more detail, but the future of a one state. As you've pointed out, it is one state right now, but
it is one state. It's been
not
for
a democracy.
really long time. I recently contributed to, if readers are interested in reading more deeply on this issue, and I suggest they do, a book called The One State Reality, something that I contributed a chapter to, and there are many very thoughtful chapters in that book discussing sort of the place we are in today, which is this one state reality where one state controls the land between the river and the sea and the people there. And I think, I hope that the war on Palestinians in Gaza ends immediately. But whenever it does, I think we're going to be deeper in that one state reality, not further away from it. And I have long thought that Israelis and Palestinians are destined to live with each other. And people may not like that on both sides. There may be some who may not want that. We can all perhaps agree to blame it on the British. It doesn't really matter. But at the end of the day, we are going to have to find rules under which we can all live together in this place between the river and the sea in peace. And I think that the way that you do that is through democracy and through equal rights and equality before the law. And I think that those kinds of principles reduce conflict all over the world when they're actually implemented. And there's no reason that they should not be tried between Israelis and Palestinians. So that's been my view. I've written extensively on this. There's folks want to check out a piece in Foreign Affairs on this as well, where I expand on it. I know we're not going to be able to cover it all in a couple of minutes, but but that's the gist.
And you yourself come from Palestine. Do you still have family there? And is anyone in Gaza? Any family member in Gaza?
Yeah, we do. I mean, my family survived the ethnic cleansing in 1948. So I was actually part of the small community of Palestinians that remained inside what became Israel. So we became Palestinian citizens of Israel. But because of that experience, we have family members across the land between the river and the sea, and also outside of it as well, who all became refugees. We've got family in Gaza. We've got family across what is today Israel. We have family in the West Bank. So there isn't an inch of this space that we don't have people that are connected to it.
Yeah, and everyone I know who has family in Gaza has lost people.
It's incredibly sad. The most urgent thing right now is to bring an end to this attack, to bring an end to this bombardment. And it's going to take years for people, if they ever recover from what they survived in Gaza.
And what do you think Americans can do to help stop this war?
Well, I've seen opinion polls in the last several days that have showed that, a significant majority of Americans support a ceasefire. That doesn't seem to be represented by their elected representatives. And I think that's a tragedy. It's a tragedy, not just for the people in Gaza, but also here in the United States, when, we are seeing mass atrocities taking place. And people here in the United States speaking up about it and being ignored by their representatives. I think that's horrific. And I think that people of conscience should continue calling on their officials and demanding an end to this horrific war.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Yousef. And where can people find you on Twitter and what you're writing in general? We'll link to your pieces, but
yeah, you can probably Twitter is the best place, at Yousef Munayyer, my first name and last name. And you could find plenty of my writing at the Arab Center as well, arabcenterdc.org.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me, Katie.
Thank you. Okay. That was an amazing interview. Wow. I love talking to Yousef, and I'm so excited that he could join. Thank you so much, everyone who's tuned in. We are so excited to bring on our next two guests, but we're going to take a very short break before we speak to Chuck and Afeni. And again, these are two activists who were at last night's protests, which has been misrepresented by the media. So I'm actually going to first, before we bring them on, let's play the Brad Sherman clip and then the Afeni clip. So what we're going to do right now is we're going to watch the way a Democratic congressman represented what happened last night to the media, to CNN. And then we're going to see what Afeni, who was there, had to say. Is the Afeni clip there? Oh, did I not upload the Afeni clip? 1 second. Let me just do one thing. Sorry, guys. Present video file. This is like the best one. One of the best ones. Here we go. Okay, I'm adding the Afeni clip. Okay, great. So we're going to play the Brad Sherman, and then Afeni, and then I'll come back and introduce people.
Entirely peaceful. And here you have a demonstration less than 1,000th as large that's also getting publicity. And it's getting publicity because their willingness to attack police, as they did with pepper spray, is a force multiplier. A few demonstrators willing to attack police getting a fair amount of publicity, whereas the amount of publicity for 200,000 peaceful demonstrators proportionately less.
And I just want to make a note here that we don't know exactly who was responsible for the pepper spray, but as we continue to report on this story, we'll learn more. Congressman Brad Sherman, I do thank you for joining us tonight.
I believe the Capitol Police.
All right.
By Capitol Police. Somehow, some way, January 6th, they did not do their fucking jobs, but today they can do it. Today they can do it when it's black and brown people, when it's marginalized groups. Somehow, some way, they find the motherfucking strength to fucking shove people down on and fucking tear gas us. Peaceful fucking protesters. We are peaceful fucking protesters. At the end of the day, you see what the fuck they're doing. You see what the fuck they're doing. We are out here because there are 11,000 and counting Palestinian people that have been slaughtered by the Zionist regime that is Israel. We are out here because we are fucking tired of our fucking tax dollars going to kill children in another fucking country. That is why we are out here. And these fucking bitch-ass pigs are part of the goddamn problem. Because these are the same motherfuckers that go over there and trade with the fucking IDF. And look at them. Look at the way they fucking act. This is the militarized fucking police force. This is the shit that we do in America. Now just fucking imagine what those children and those men and those women and those fucking grandparents in Gaza are experiencing right now.
And without any further ado, bring on that wonderful woman that we just saw yelling, righteously yelling, Afeni and Chuck Modiano. So welcome, Afeni, and welcome, Chuck. How are you guys?
Great to be here.
Thanks for coming.
Yeah, thanks for
Afeni, we can't hear you, ironically, after just hearing you. Let's see. You're muted. Let me see. Say
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can.
There
Okay.
we go.
Okay, yeah, it's
All right,
it's my mic now.
Oh, okay. Is your mic plugged in?
No, I unplugged. I think it shorted out.
Oh, got it. Okay, fine. No worries. All righty. So let's see. Tell us what happened last night. And you know what? I hope I should have offered a trigger warning before we saw that Brad Sherman tweet, because it's such a disgusting, despicable lie, as we'll get into shortly. But tell us what this protest was that you were at last night.
So yeah, we were out there with Jewish Forces for Peace, and If Not Now, I believe is the other org's name. We were out there. The plan was to block the entrances, not to enter the building, but to block the entrance of the DNC, like do some chants, do some like programming outside. And we had art. We had art and we had candles. So I don't know where they came up with this whole pepper spray thing. None of us had any weapons at all. So so the first group, so we left in groups. The first group went and they were actually the ones that were locking down. And then the secondary groups come in and we were the ones that were supposed to actually be running the programming. But I'm gonna be real with you, Katie. As you know, I've done a lot of protests. I've been in a lot of situations like that. I have never seen a protest escalate as quickly and as violently as that one did. I was probably only out there for like 3 minutes before it started getting like really, really crazy. So yeah, that's my best recollection. I don't know if Chuck wants to add anything.
I mean, you said it. You said it last night. You said what we saw. You're saying it now. I do want to add that there was a vigil prior to being at the DNC, and it was a beautiful vigil. And it was a vigil where you had a Christian minister, you had people of Muslim faith, you had rabbis, all talk about a shared value of human life and how human life is precious. And that's how it started. And a lot of what we saw at the DNC was bringing that vigil over there, bringing the candles over there, coming out of love, coming out of peace, and having ceasefire written down. And so let's be clear, this was not a police-involved brutality. This was police-initiated. So when people are saying it was violent, well, yeah, it was violent because police initiated violence. When people say there was pepper spray, yeah, there was pepper spray because the police had pepper spray for no good reason. And then when you actually look at their language, what they said was, Brad Sherman, was that there were police who suffered from being pepper sprayed. Now listen to that, being pepper sprayed. By who were you pepper sprayed by? By a fellow officer. That's who you were pepper sprayed by. But by the untrained ear or the media stenographers who just reprint statements will infer that a protester had that pepper spray. No, they caught that pepper spray from each other. And anyone who's been in that situation knows you're always going to catch a little bit. So the violence was initiated by police, perpetuated by police, and amplified by the likes of Brad Sherman and CNN and a bunch of media liars. And that's why I'm thankful for people like you, Katie, who are bringing the truth, not just today, but for a long time, particularly in the area of anti-Semitism being confused for anti-Zionism.
Yeah. Well, thank you. And love what both of you guys just said. I'm going to share what Jewish Voice for Peace, because the rally last night was organized by Jewish Voice for Peace and If Not Now. And here's what they said happened, okay?
Washington. Traditions. We light candles for the dead. I'm here today calling for a ceasefire to honor the 1,200 Israelis killed on October 7th, the more than 11,200 Palestinians killed since then, over 12,400 divine lights devastatingly extinguished. I'm here to say not one more, to pray and to plead for those in power in our government to do everything they can to save lives, to free hostages, to send the prisoners home.
So that's a great video that explains what JVP, Jewish Voice for Peace, was doing there. And they were there with If Not Now. And just to give you guys some background, this is from Jewish Voice for Peace Action. So their release said, police violently attacked nonviolent anti-war activists at a ceasefire vigil outside a fundraiser event held at the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee Wednesday evening, wielding pepper spray and pellet guns. The police rushed members of the interfaith vigil without warning, where some activists had blocked some of the doors of the Democratic DCC's candidates event, asking politicians to call for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza. The activists were joined by faith leaders in calling for a ceasefire to end the Israeli military massacre of Palestinians, to facilitate a hostage exchange, and to ensure that humanitarian and medical aid can reach Palestinians in besieged Gaza. As hundreds of anti-war protesters assembled with 11,000 candles and signs calling for a ceasefire, DC police, many in riot gear, rushed the candlelight vigil and attacked protesters, blocking some of the entrances to the door of the DCCC. The vigil continued for 30 minutes with participants singing "Which Side Are You On?" and chanting "Ceasefire Now." The vigil was sponsored by If Not Now, Democratic Socialists of America, and Jewish Voice for Peace Action. So that's what really happened, and that matches up, of course, with what you guys just both reported. But it's unbelievable that these people are lying in such a blatant way that's so contradicted by what is captured on video and in photos. In fact, let me just share this one photo of a protester, again, nonviolent protester, being pepper sprayed. Hold on a second. Okay, you can see very clearly that this very angry cop, who happens to have notice his arm tattoos, because you'll see why in a second. This very angry cop is spraying this woman. You can see the pepper spray coming straight out of his can and into this poor woman's eye, who is there, not violent, not armed. calling for a ceasefire to a genocidal war. And that's what she gets. She gets pepper sprayed, and then she gets called violent. And that same cop actually what is present in another video, which let's see, which one is that? In this video, watch this.
My fucking tax dollars! I pay for everything! I pay for the clothes on their children's crap! I pay for their mortgage! I pay for their rent! I pay for the fucking car note! You will not disrespect me and my fucking property!
There he is, you see? The same cop.
You're a fucking civil servant!
So that's a cop trampling over these lights that symbolize the 11,000 people killed. That same cop.
I feel like it's like a perfect visual for exactly what's going on right now. You know, I'm gonna be real, like clearly I'm a little emotional now, but it's just, we are angry for a reason. But yes, we are angry, but we're also grieving. We are sad. We are taking in all of the photos and the videos of what is going on in Gaza and what is happening to the Palestinian people. And the reason why we are out there and we'll continue to stay out there is because we know that this needs to be stopped. And these are the people that are in power that could actually stop this. These are the people who we are literally paying their salaries. They give them health care. They have security details that come out of our tax dollar pockets. So they should listen to us, and they should not, as they instructed the Capitol Police to do, use as much force as possible against peaceful protesters, against grieving people, because that's really what this is. This is an expression of our grief. It's an expression of our rage, and it's an expression of our solidarity to the Palestinian people. And to see like just the indifference, I just know I'm frustrated, and I know that we're no strangers to police violence. Like Chuck and I, like we've done a lot of this work together over the past 4 years, and especially in 2020, you know, there were like what we're seeing here, like there was hours of that for over 200 days. We dealt with hours of that treatment and that behavior from the police, not just Capitol Police, MPD, Secret Service. So it's just, I think at what point is the mainstream media especially going to get the picture that the protests for Black and Palestinian people especially are always going to be treated with a different level of violence than say a climate protest or a gun violence protest. It's just, they're just not getting the same level of aggression at these other types of protests. So it's just, I don't know, like to see what Brad Sherman said and to know that the mainstream media, MSNBC, they're going to run with that. They're going to run with that narrative, and it completely dehumanizes the people that we're advocating for. And that's the most frustrating part of all of this.
Right. Like you said in that video of you were kind of saying like, this is what they're doing to us. So just imagine what they're doing over there.
Yeah. Like, I mean, honestly, I'm sure there are many things that the Palestinian people do not show us. But we don't have to imagine it, you know, like we can see it. Eyes on Palestine, Motaz, Plestia, like these people that are on the ground that are actually sharing their stories so bravely. You have parents holding up the body parts of their children, you know? So it's just, imagine what it feels like to actually be in it 24/7, and to, on top of that, be hungry, be thirsty, be sleep deprived, because the nighttime is the scariest time for Palestinian people in the Gaza Strip and in the West Bank as well. So it's just, like, I think I'm running out of words, Katie. Running out of words.
No, I understand. Yeah. Well, I want to share with you guys another. Well, Chuck, did you want to add anything to that before I move.
Just on
tweet.
her on Afeni's last point, when she's saying, "Well, I know it's a little bit what it feels like," and I probably have interviewed you, Afeni, more than any other person since 2020 in George Floyd. But there were a couple of times you were snatched by police. You were literally snatched in the police line, and I distinctly remember when you came out after having to spend the night in that horrific DC jail. It changed you. It changed a little how you moved. It changed how you felt, even by police. And you already didn't have a very kind feeling, but you sometimes only need a taste, and that little taste, and you multiply it by 100 or 1,000 to say, what are Palestinians going through? And it's not that difficult to projection, but it's horrific.
Yeah. And what exactly happened to both of you last night? Like you talked about it a little bit, but what did you experience?
So like I said, when I first came in, the first thing that we started to do was try to like hold like a line, right? Because number one, the police were escalating. They were swinging these big gates at us. Like, I don't know if y'all saw like the partition barriers. People were getting knocked to the ground. They were like, I got pepper sprayed, but I mean, like I said, I have more experience like pepper spray and CS gas, and other people do, especially because being in the military, they intentionally expose you to pepper spray and CS gas. So I definitely wasn't affected as much as like other comrades were, but people were like on the ground getting trampled by police, like eyes burning, like it's bodies burning also, because especially with those those tear gas pellets, they don't just burn your eyes, they literally burn your skin. They get into your hair, like into your clothes. So anytime you touch your face, you touch your eyes, it feels like you're getting pepper sprayed all over again. And for me, just experiencing like that kind of like just the push and pull, getting pushed over by police officers, getting like shoved, getting hit by bikes. It's, again, for people that were singing and that had candles, we had microphones and megaphones. If we were, I mean, in 2020, I can definitely say there was a different level of aggression, even from our side, because of how much we had been dealing with the police. We started really not matching their energy, because we could never match the use of force that they have, considering. But even just the way we moved, we were prepared for that type of aggression in 2020. We were not prepared for that last night. That was not so just to experience, number one, the quickness of the escalation, and also just how aggressive they were, was genuinely shocking to me. And I feel, especially for my Jewish brothers and sisters that were actually blocking the doors, that got thrown down the stairs, I can only really imagine how their bodies are feeling, how they're feeling mentally today. But just watching it for me was like triggering in ways that I don't think I have fully realized. I just simply, because I really haven't processed everything. But like they were fucking us up. Like they were fucking us up. Like we were meeting them with some aggression,
with force. Yeah. It's interesting because you described how there's a difference in marches, in protests that are mostly black and brown versus mostly white. And this was at the DSA organized it, Jewish Voice for Peace Action organized it, and If Not Now. So two of the three groups were Jewish. And I think what we saw was, it was almost like, and a lot of the Jews there were white Jews, I should say. And what was interesting is it's almost like they are so threatened by what people are calling for with the ceasefire that they didn't really use the restraint that they often use with white protesters, the relative restraint. It is, yeah. Sorry, yeah.
Well, I would say it's twofold, and I thought Afeni really hit the nail on the head. There have been many more violent protests in DC over George Floyd, but you're prepared. You're right. Like you got your armor on. You kind of know what you're walking into. If you feel like tear gas, something might come your way. The fact that it's a vigil, the fact that people are coming in peace and singing in love, You know, it almost reminds me of that day there was a funeral in Palestine and the pallbearers, and we've seen the video, and it gets attacked. It's like, how dare you?
Yeah.
And so there's that dynamic that's going on. But there's also, I would argue, what was interesting is that they actually did, though they were violent on protests, they didn't actually make a lot of arrests. And I would normally, I might say that's privilege, but I don't think that's quite what it is. I believe if they make arrests and they're predominantly Jewish people, predominantly anti-Zionist Jews, that media works against the narrative.
Exactly,
it works against the narrative that Judaism is synonymous with Zionism.
Yeah.
And that's the narrative that they're really trying to put out. So they probably got a command order not to make mass arrests. I saw them throw people back into the crowd, and that was interesting. And the last thing I want to end with, which I thought was really symbolic, is that there was a protester who had a Palestinian flag, and a cop reached across the aisle, took the Palestinian flag, ripped it out of his hands, and threw it on the ground aggressively. I do not believe if that was an Israeli flag, that would have happened, nor did we see that on Wednesday. So there was something else going on here. It wasn't behavior of protesters. It was the protest itself.
Right. And we actually have, speaking of the vigil aspect, we have, just so people get a sense of how not violent it is, this is actually one of your videos, Chuck, where it's like the last video before the violence started. So I wanted to also show, okay, so that's the before the police violence starts.
And about 1 minute before, because that's the last video I had. And then my next video, there's violence. So that was about less than a minute before the violence.
So let's look at this. David Weigel, who's a reporter, shared this video. Let's go to this video, the David Weigel clip.
I think the last video was cop coding.
Is this video stuck?
Yeah, the videos have been lagging.
Crap. Hold on one second. Maybe we have to take some of the other ones out. Andrew, would you mind, while I'm doing this, like just taking out the clips that we already watched? Because I just wanted to show this violent one. So I think you do the 3 dots and you remove from studio. Sorry about this tech stuff.
We're live, folks.
I know we're live. Fuck it, we'll do it live. Hopefully we can watch the Dave Weigel clip, the shoving clip. I have to remove it. Okay, we watched the JVP. Thanks, guys, for your patience. And thank you again so much, Afeni and Chuck, for joining. Really appreciate it. Okay, 1 second. All right, let's see if this works. Okay, we got that one too. All right. Yeah. If you're not. All right, I'll cut them in. That. Yeah, I'll cut them in later, or maybe I can show it in YouTube. I wonder if that works. Let me try this, because I'm also going to show you guys something I couldn't believe it. This is footage that Democratic Majority for Israel put out. Okay, so first I'm going to show you the footage of it, and then we're going to see their tweet. But first, let's watch their footage. Hold on. See. All right, I hope this works. Let's see.
Oh shit! So look, I just got thrown. People getting thrown down the stairs. People getting thrown down the stairs. Yo.
Okay, so they're getting thrown, right? They're getting thrown down the stairs. And this is what Democratic Majority for Israel, which is like an AIPAC kind of group, which tries to fund people who are very Zionist and tries to get people who are not sufficiently Zionist out of office. They write, does any real Democrat want to side with those violent, let me start again. Does any real Democrat want to side with those violently assaulting the Democrats' headquarters building? These thugs have more in common with Mark Wayne Mullen than with Democrats who won't be bullied into putting Hamas in position to launch more brutal attacks as they promised. It shows the exact opposite of what they're saying. Like they couldn't be making it up more. The people who are inflicting violence are the cops. The protesters are not violent. But the fact that they say this, something that is undermined by the very video that they released, they don't even go through the effort of like editing it, taking one misleading photo. They are so entitled and so used to their impunity and getting away with everything that they just put out a video that totally shows that they're lying.
Yeah. And it's my video they took. They took my video.
That's your video?
Took that video.
Oh, okay.
No, they stole my video. I've learned right now. They stole my video. And what's going through my head is, well, I could tell them to take it down. But on the other hand, I'm like, just what you said. The video is the opposite of what actually they're saying. And if it's more powerful to leave it, I might be like, hey, maybe leave it. You tell me. You consult. Help me out.
I think it is. I mean, it's unbelievable, the footage. It's like, as long as people watch the footage, which I think they do. What do you guys think?
What do you think, Afeni?
I mean, I think that, number one, I've never seen such delusion in my entire life. These people are delusional. The Democratic Party, whoever is running the DNC, y'all are delusional. Because if 68%, that's a new poll, if 68% of the country supports a ceasefire, 56% of Republicans, like I think it's like over 80% of Democrats at this point, support a ceasefire. So are we really going to let AIPAC and the ADL really run our politics so much that y'all are just going to completely just ignore your voters? They should leave the video up because they look like idiots. Yeah. They look like idiots. The same way that the state of Israel keeps putting out all this propaganda, these AI generated videos of Hamas tunnels that exist under every school and refugee camp in Gaza, apparently. Child, like it's delusion, it's lies, because just like this video, just like we can literally see the disconnect between what the caption says and what they're saying, we can see the disconnect between what the state of Israel and what the mainstream media, what the president of the United States decides to say out of his mouth and what is actually happening.
Exactly.
Israeli government official just came out on this secret call and said that we have a TikTok problem. We have a generational problem. The problem is that we are getting so much information that now the propaganda is not working. You cannot manufacture consent when we can literally see it. So they should leave it up. Leave it up, because y'all look stupid and they can continue to make fools out of themselves. And the more and more they try to suppress our movement, the more and more they try to suppress our fights and our calls for liberation, the more of us come outside and realize that, wow, maybe like the more people that actually realize like, wow, maybe this is just an information war at this point. This isn't a religious war. This isn't what they're trying to say. It is an information war. They're trying to control the narrative and they are losing. They are losing, and that's why they're losing their minds. And I feel like also that's a part of the reason why we saw the level of violence at this protest that we saw yesterday, so they could try to spin it flip it and reverse it and say it was us. But if you can watch even the video they put it on CNN. Who is it that was pushing and shoving and yanking people around? It was the police. It was the police. So
yeah,
put it all out. I beg they can continue. I want the state of Israel. I want their official Twitter account to put something out too. Please spread it. Please spread it.
That's exactly the parallel I was thinking of. Afeni, was like the impunity with which these people lie is stunning. Whether it's Democratic Majority for Israel, the Israeli government, our President Biden, who mentioned the 40 decapitated babies again, even though that's been debunked, but he keeps mentioning it. And this is the video by Dave Weigel that I meant to show that I can show now. Okay, one second.
And I just want to say real quick, honestly, if any of the things that the state of Israel was saying was true, do you not think that there would be billboards all up and down 95 showing those photos? You don't think they would run that 24/7?
Right.
Like, let's be so for real, y'all. Like, come on now, y'all.
Yeah, totally agree. Let's see. Share screen. Okay, Gaza protest outside DNC. Where's that? How do I? Andrew, is it there? I forgot. Okay, great. Okay, let's play this, please. Thank you. Oh, I play it. Right.
Your tax dollars hard at work, y'all.
But as you can see, they were not trying to enter the building, as you guys have laid out, and you just see them shoving. And of course, what you said, Chuck, is really true. They don't want the optics of a bunch of Jews getting arrested in solidarity with Palestinians. So that's why they had to be so forceful with them, because they couldn't arrest them.
Yeah, I mean, this has been the coming out of anti-Zionist Jews, the coming out party in many ways, because I mean, my first Free Palestine protest, I'm an anti-Zionist Jew, was 2014. That's my awakening. And people remember the massacre. I think it was 1,500 civilians to only 6 civilians, Palestinian to Israelis killed. And what's happening is there are a lot of Jews awakening now who have been told lies like I was told growing up. I don't know if you've always been this way or you were reformed along the way, but I was told lies growing up. And you have to take a minute to be like, wow, that's not true. Here are the facts. Here's what's happening. But now we're in the cell phone age, and those old lies and the media that was only the mainstream media is no longer working. And power does not know what to do with that.
Right. Let me just see if there's one more clip, just because I feel like let's see if this works.
I was pressed up against that car. They were like shoving us up against that car. It's like bodies on top of bodies.
Look at them just shoving.
Let Gaza live! Let Gaza live!
Look at that.
Let Gaza live! Let Gaza live! Let Gaza live! Let Gaza live!
Yeah, it's disgusting. One more thing I want to share is, and that guy, Brad Sherman, I hope someone runs against him. I really do. But here's how, so it's nice. It's bipartisan, like this whole issue is. So that's how Brad Sherman presented it. Well, let's see how this Republican Speaker of the House presented what happened last night. Last night, pro-Hamas protesters outside the U.S. Capitol violently attacked the Democratic National Committee headquarters. I condemn this criminal activity, which injured 6 brave Capitol police officers in the strongest terms. As Americans, we must unite with one voice in the steadfast support of our ally, Israel. I want to thank the officers with the U.S. Capitol Police who worked quickly to evacuate members, staff, and civilians and arrest those engaged in violence. Congress will not be intimidated by this vile display of anti-Semitism. Okay, so let me just say something to you, Mike Johnson, Speaker Johnson. People like you who claim to oppose vile anti-Semitism want Jews like me to go to Israel where I can accept Jesus Christ as my Lord and Savior, or burn in hell and be in eternal damnation. And you celebrate the violent attacks on unarmed Jewish protesters. So you are celebrating violent attacks on unarmed Jews. Who is the anti-Semite? Who is the vile anti-Semite? That would be you, Speaker Johnson. I'm not going to bring the rapture for you. Sorry. I can't stand this, like this the goy cosplay where they pretend to be Jewish allies just because they want all of us to expedite the end times.
That's right. That's the John Hagee, right?
Yeah, right. John Hagee. I hope all of the people who were at the Israel rally are proud that they stood on stage with someone who has said that God sent Hitler, that Hitler was sent by God to get Jews to Israel. Hitler was a hunter. He says it was in Jeremiah. So these people are in bed with anti-Semites. They ask us to condemn everyone and anything remotely connected to anything that we're supporting, but they get to stand on stage with actual bigots and don't have to pay a price. So it's just disgusting.
And America is a deeply anti-Semitic country. I feel like a lot of these people that are trying to like push this narrative that America is like this great arbiter of human rights, that is not true. And during World War II, what did America do? Some Jews came over here to seek refuge. And what do? Yeah. We sent them right on back. Right on back. And many of those people died in gas chambers. Many of those people died in gas chambers. So this fake care for the Jewish people, when at the end of the day, the only reason why America is so invested in the state of Israel at the full stop is because it's a strategic military position.
Right.
Joe Biden said himself that if Israel did not exist, we would have created it.
Right. We'd have to invent it. We'd have to create it. Yeah. He said that like in the 80s and he has said it since. Yeah.
So it's like this is not about protecting the Jewish community. And I really love my anti-Zionist Jewish brothers and sisters that are really bringing light to that. Because Katie, I really love that because at the end of the day, like this is not about hating Jews. Like this is not about anti-Semitism. This is about hating genocide. Right. This is about being vehemently against any form of white supremacy. And Zionism is an extension of that white supremacy because it's an extension of America. Period. Right. Full stop.
And it was a way to get the Jews out of America, like so that they wouldn't have to come here after the Holocaust, send them to Israel. Right. And out of Europe. Yeah.
Yeah. And because so part of this movement, it's like it's interesting. You always want to center Palestinians first. Always, because they're getting the brunt of it. But part of this struggle is reclaiming Judaism, right? Because if anyone who is not a Jew says anything critical of Israel, you're anti-Semitic. But when 2,000-3,000 Jews show up at Grand Central Station it's a little bit harder.
Yeah,
to
you're a
make
bunch
that
of
claim.
self-loathing Jews. What? Like,
Right.
you know, what's the likelihood of this? I was thinking, it's like, what's more likely, that there are some Jews who are racist and tribalist and chauvinist and nationalist and ethno-nationalist, and other Jews who have a conscience, or there are Jews who are just protecting Jewish life and never again, and all of us are self-loathing. We're all delusional. Like, what is our ulterior motive? You know,
I mean,
no.
I mean, it's just so interesting because much of the feedback that comes on social media, there's many Jews and other people who've been brainwashed by media so much that Zionism and Judaism are synonymous,
conflated, yeah.
that they're saying these protesters are fake, these protesters are paid, this is not real. Like, they're going through such a mind bend that they can't even accept that thousands of anti-Zionist Jews would say free Palestine.
It's true, yeah. And the thing is, I mean, I mentioned this earlier in the show, and it always strikes me, though, is that, like, anti-Semites use the word Zionists and Jews interchangeably, right? Like, the Zionist this, the Zionist that. And the other people doing that, who are trying to conflate that, are the ADL, Israel, and AIPAC. Like, what's wrong with you when you're using the same framing as them? And it's anti-Semitic to suggest that all Jews support Israel. That's the dual loyalty trope that these people got so mad at Ilhan Omar for invoking, which she didn't, obviously. But, you know, it's like they will use the most tortured logic to prove something's anti-Semitic. Like Greta Thunberg with her, who happened to have a stuffed animal octopus in the background of her photo. They're like, that's an anti-Semitic trope. Get the fuck out of here.
Yeah. That's right.
It's a cute little soft plushy animal. Like, so ridiculous.
I think so.
Yeah.
And, you know, like, and I see this in the comments a lot. So just to uplift it, like, Palestinians are Semites, people that are from the Middle East, indigenous to the Middle East, they are Semites. They are from, like, you know, I guess it's like the Abraham thing. They all descend from Abraham or whatever. They are Semites. So how is it anti-Semitic to say that Semitic people should not be getting literally wiped off the face of the earth by a state, by an ethno-state at that? It just, we really just need to, I don't know, like, at this point, people can call me whatever they want to call me. I know why I'm doing what I'm doing. I know who I'm doing it for, and I know who I don't fuck with. I don't fuck with white supremacists. I don't fuck with Zionists. Like, that's really what it comes down to. That has nothing to do with, like, that just has nothing to do with the actual religion of Judaism. And I think that this constant, like, the talk about the religions at all is also contributing to, like, their part of trying to frame this as a religious war. This is not a religious war. This is literally human rights versus pro-genocide. Like, that's the split. And, you know, especially as somebody, I grew up in a very, like, hyper Christian household. So a lot of my family members still wear Stars of David because it's just seen as a religious symbol. You know what I'm saying? So I don't know. Like, I really wish that the people that spend all of this time trying to smear us, like, they actually took the time out to talk to us, to talk to Palestinian people, to talk about the reason why Hamas even exists to begin with. Because the same reason Hamas exists is the same reason why the ANC existed. Like, that's really all it boils down to. That's really what it all boils down to.
And good reminder, they were on the terrorist list, the ANC. That's
right. I think Reagan had to be vetoed by Congress to be against apartheid. Now everybody's on the same side.
Did you guys hear about that Greta Thunberg thing, by the way? Had you heard about this?
About the fuzzy octopus.
Oh, wait, let me show you. I got to show you.
Story.
Trigger warning, guys. You're going to see something really anti-Semitic.
Yeah.
Okay, you see, it says Free Palestine. This Jew stands with Palestine. Climate justice now. And she says, Greta's sign says stand with Gaza. But then she has a little plushy, adorable octopus behind her. Which people, in their despair to discredit someone, because who wants Greta Thunberg on the opposite side of you, right? She's a pretty morally just person. They suggested it was an anti-Semitic trope hold on, let me see what it is.
Chad, you're gonna have to explain that one to me because I don't get that.
I don't get it either.
Okay, so predictably many criticized. I'm reading from Rolling Stone. Predictably many criticized her post for failing to condemn the terrorist group Hamas's October 7th surprise on Israel, which left at least 1,400 people dead, many of whom were civilians. Perhaps less predictably, however, others focused on the octopus, interpreting it to be a kraken, a mythical multi-tentacled sea beast that was occasionally used in Nazi iconography. What does the kraken next to you on the couch mean, Greta Thunberg? One account with more than 1,000 retweets wrote, the kraken was and is a well-known sign of the Nazis for the anti-Semitic term international finance Judaism.
So octopuses are Hamas now. Octopi are Hamas now. That's
Octa Hamas. Yeah. So ridiculous.
No, it's pretty comical.
Yeah, it really
it's pretty comical. But if there's anyone who's been using the language of Nazis, it's been the Israeli leadership up and down, the animalization of humans, dehumanizing everyone. Weren't Jews called vermin? Weren't Jews called rats? Isn't that the same playbook as Joseph Goebbels that we're seeing out of Netanyahu's camp?
Yeah, it was really disgusting. And the dehumanization that they're human animals, like you can't, that's what's crazy is that these people, the Israeli government and their supporters are saying the quiet part out loud. Yeah. Like I had on Craig Mokhiber on, who resigned from the UN, and he was saying what's often hard when you're trying to build a case for genocide is that you have to prove genocidal intent. And he's like, but Israel's making it really easy. Oh yeah, because they say it out loud.
And they also said that not only that, but they're trying to expand their borders into southern Lebanon.
Yeah,
they're trying to expand their borders into parts of Syria. They're trying to this is a settler colonial project. The quicker everybody taps in with that, the more they'll understand that this is genocide. And then on top of that, Benjamin from Pennsylvania, Netanyahu said that he quoted the Bible verse.
Amalek. Yeah, which is from the book of Samuel and says that you have to kill every man, woman, child, oxen, ass, the suckling, spare no one.
So if there's talk, and they also said they want to turn Gaza into a parking lot. How many more human rights organizations have to come out? How many more UN officials have to come out? How many more genocidal statements they have to make openly before people are like, oh wow, maybe this is genocide?
I know.
But unless Afeni, the people who are supporting have the same mindset as Israeli leadership, that if you are an animal, you're a human animal, then you're not committing a human rights crime because you're not committing a rights crime against humans. And that is the view of Israeli leadership. And unfortunately, many Americans, right-wing Americans who are supporting, and not so many and quote-unquote centrist Americans who are supporting, it's based on that white supremacy as well. We're not committing human rights crimes because those lives aren't as important, don't matter, are human animals.
Right. Firmware makes an important point. Zionists have been killing Arabs since 1948. This created the PLO and Hamas. Recognizing cause and effect is not the same as condoning Hamas violence.
Yeah, we have to have explanations for things. We have to explain why things happen. So if we're talking about the Middle East and ISIS, we have to talk about how America created ISIS. This is having an intellectual conversation.
Right. Yeah. Well, thank you guys so much for your time. Is anything else that you want to make sure that we talk about or cover? Anything you want to talk about?
Friday?
I was going to say, so if you are in or around the DMV area, there is another pro-Palestine, pro-peace rally tomorrow at 4:30 at Union Station. So if you're around, you can make it. Please come. And clearly be prepared for foolishness because the police are on one.
Right. And Chuck, were you saying something about a boycott?
Yeah, there was something this morning. There's actually it was a nationwide Starbucks protest. I got there a little bit late, but the Starbucks closed down in DC. They said we're temporarily closed. That's a big win today on a big Red Cup day. But people are boycotting Starbucks. People are boycotting McDonald's. Two big supporters of Israel.
And where can people find your guys' work?
I mean, I've been posting at Chuck Modi 1. I'm going to continue to post there at Chuck Mo D1. And going forward.
Chuck,
I just really want to say I really appreciate what you've been doing, Katie. I think people know, but you've lost employment over your position. Okay.
Yeah.
So you're not someone who's been untouched by or not just coming in October 2023. You've been talking about this for a long time when it was far lonelier than it is right now.
Thanks.
I appreciate that.
Thank you so much. Yeah. I also want to give it. Oh, go Afeni. Yeah.
No, go ahead.
Well, I want to give, I come from a family. I have relatives in Israel. I'm not very close with them, but I have relatives in Israel. But my family, I'm lucky that my parents have like the same politics as me. But and obviously we are centering the Palestinians, and I've talked about Palestinians on like every show I've done. This one, I just want to focus on the, because part of the Palestinian liberation struggle is solidarity and is changing what's happening here on the ground also. But I have friends, like I have an Israeli friend who like showed me the text from his mom. I mean, they are just like the things that some Israelis are having said about them is awful, and being called traitors and, not being able to talk about this stuff with their families. So I want to recognize them. And Afeni, sorry, what were you saying?
Oh, no, I was just going to say like, my tag is right there, but I really wanted to like uplift my Palestinian brothers and sisters that are organizing in DC. So if you want to, and if you aren't from the DMV area, but you still want to support their work, you can follow MD to Palestine on Instagram. You can also follow DMV, Palestinian Youth Movement, DMV PYM. Sorry, the acronym messed me up, y'all. But yeah, please like follow them, support them, give them love, because our Palestinian brothers and sisters, like they're feeling this in multiple ways. Not only are they out here fighting on the front lines, but they're also losing family members every day. So please support your Palestinian siblings. If you are in community with any Palestinian people, just make sure you're giving them some extra love. And thank you so much, Katie. I love you down, and I'm so sorry. I want to see you soon.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, like just really grateful for you and grateful for all of your work. Grateful for your voice in this space.
Thank you guys
using
too.
your platform so bravely. Yes, there's so much respect for you.
And what's the organization you're with, Afeni?
So I am a direct action lead with I'm a direct action lead with Harry's Wildest Dreams. I'm the co-director of Organizing Outreach with Life After Release. So
nice.
Giving Tuesday's coming up, y'all.
Okay, nice. Yeah.
That's right.
And Chuck,
you've been very involved since day one in the Free Palestine movement. Since George Floyd, there were many connections in the DC streets. And you mentioned Maryland to Palestine and Palestinian Youth Movement. I wanted to say a couple things.
Yeah,
they've been in the streets
when
rallies were only 30 people for a long time. So they've been out there consistently, and now it's much bigger. So Maryland to Palestine, Palestinian Youth Movement.
Yeah, we had on Mohammed Hissam from the Palestinian Youth Movement. And of course, that's not his real name because he can't give his real name because he doesn't want to get doxxed. But he was great. And Chuck, people can hear you're a sports journalist. So where can people hear your show?
It's 10 a.m. WPFW FM on 10 a.m. Sports. The collision where sports and politics collide. But go to WPFW for anything at any time because they're independent. You could say Free Palestine or anything else about the truth, and they'll tell you what's going on in the DC streets. So it's a great independent radio station. You could go online, WPFW/FM.
And is your last name a secret, Chuck?
No, Chuck Modiano is my last name.
Yeah, got it. I was
sure,
just going to ask.
People
so is
call
that
me Chuck Modi, so I stick with it. But on my bylines, I'll write Modiano.
Is that a Sephardic name or is it Italian?
Well, it's funny you say that because I am a Sephardic Jew. My family's from Egypt, and I heard stories from grandparents about Muslims and Jews sharing cultures and coming together. But I don't know 100% of the story, but a lot of Jews, particularly Sephardic Jews, they would go through Italy and they would get a passport and they would change their names to Italian names before they went into Europe. I don't know if you heard that story, but that wasn't that uncommon. And I'm not 100% because my parents passed a while ago.
I'm sorry.
If that is exactly the case, but I've been told that.
Okay, so you're not a pizza bagel. I thought maybe you were a pizza bagel.
No. Cairo, Egypt, my family is from.
All right, yeah.
He's
One
an
of my best
African
friends
American.
is a African American. Yeah, right. One of my best friends is Pizza Bagel. That's obviously, and people don't know Italian. Well, Jewish Italian. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um.
Afeni likes to say, "Oh, you're African American.
Yeah,
you're
that's true.
African
Yeah.
American." Because
Yeah.
from Egypt.
But that's another thing I have to do a whole show on, is this idea that like that Arabs and Jews, Muslim, I mean, and then there are Arab Jews too, right? Like, but this idea that Palestinian Jews just can't live together, so they can't have one state. It's like they're Jews in Germany now.
Yeah, exactly.
They you think, like, I think there was a little bit of a problem with anti-Semitism in Germany. So this idea that like an abyssal, right? So this idea that like Palestinians and Jews can't live together is just anyway, a lie that serves Zionism. Well, guys, this has been really great. Thank you guys for coming to this special daytime stream. And oh, this is good. Y'all just rocked my soul and lifted me up. Thank you. That's great to hear. We will be back on Tuesday night. And thank you, Chuck and Afeni, and come back. We always love talking to you. And Chuck, this is your first time on the Katie Halper Show. We've been trying to make it happen for a while.
Listen, I really appreciate it. Anytime, and then coming with Afeni anytime. We're kind of a little bit of a team out in the street, because we're always in the same place at the same time.
Right. We'll keep each other safe.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, and if you're going out to protest, please be safe, y'all. Cover your face.
Yeah. Oh yeah, yeah, because they're gonna try to. Yeah, it's a good idea. Wear a mask. All right, because they're trying to identify people and put them into these.
It's too late for me, but it's not too
late.
late.
It's too late for you.
Yeah.
Some people are like, "Why did you put Afeni's name out there?" I'm like,
yeah, right. Yeah, I know. I was like, should I? I'm gonna tag her. But besides, your name isn't. It's not Afeni anyway. Your Twitter handle.
Well, damn, Katie. You're right. It's not.
Yeah. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for watching. Please like the stream if you haven't already. Please subscribe if you haven't already. That way you don't miss any of these streams. I think we're actually going to do a very exciting screening of a documentary. I'll let you guys know about that. But make sure you tune in on Tuesday. We're going to have either next week or another week. We're having a really interesting speaker who is an Orthodox Jew and scholar, and who argues very forcefully that Zionism is antithetical to Judaism, which is an interesting argument. And he's and he also talks about the history of Zionism not being universally embraced by Jews. And he talks about how Zionism weaponizes Jewishness and Judaism. All righty. Bye, everyone. Thank you so much.